And so that leads into the Juniper conversation. So Juniper, I think it was today, announced what they're calling their blueprint for accelerating AI native network platform adoption. The announcement today actually isn't the important part of this, in my opinion. Um, Juniper, if you don't know them, they basically make wireless access points, networking equipment. They are effectively a competitor with Cisco. Um, it's about as unsexy of a business as you can get. The interesting thing about being focused on the network, of course, is even with the rise of cloud, every enterprise still needs to own their network, right? They still have to be able to connect. And so it has been a little bit more stable from that standpoint. But what I think is really interesting is they have a go-to-market story about experience first, this idea that it's all about focusing not on is the network up, but are we delivering the experience that we want to, and to what degree is our transport medium, our network, contributing or not to that? And now this idea of they're calling it AI native, and their premise, and I think there's a little bit of a hand waving here, but their fundamental premise is that they took a very deliberate approach to the data that they generate out of their network devices that they deploy. And because they start with better data, they can therefore deploy internal or embedded AI models on top of it to create at least something close to self-remediating, self-managing network environments, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what they're trying to go for. And so this what they announced today was maybe a hint that people aren't getting it, so they're trying to accelerate deployments. But it was still really, really interesting, kind of going back to what we're talking about, that they are spending a lot more time. They have a cloud business now where the entire management plane sits in what they call their Mist cloud. They have a subscription model with that. They have software. So they announced that 22% of their revenue is software. Approximately a little under 10% of their revenue is now ARR based. Those are staggering numbers, in my opinion, for a hardware company. And so I think it again speaks to this fact that hardware is becoming relevant, and this sort of integrated approach is important because we are continually fighting with how do we optimize across this, and that optimization is requiring ever more higher levels of expertise to do. And it's getting harder and harder for the enterprise to manage all of that. And so therefore we're turning to people that can do that full stack integration. And I think it's really fascinating to just sort of see, and not to be lost in all of this, is I think part of that success is why they are now being acquired by HPE for, I think it was $14 billion or something. Mm-hmm. So lots of interesting moves.
Yeah, HPE, of course, has been doing well selling hardware as a service through their basically it is pushing their business right now. So they know that it is hard to keep up with hardware. Fundamentally, if you have private cloud or on-prem capabilities, their GreenLake capabilities are able to make sure that companies can continue to upgrade their hardware over time and just pay their subscription fee. And HPE has been delivering on that really well. So obviously that has been an important trend. But I feel that also there's this thing about networking that gets overlooked in the AI world. We know storage, compute, network. Those are the three big buckets. And we talk all the time about storage and the cloud storage for AI. We talk all about compute, obviously, with the models. We spend very little time talking about networking and the needs to provide duplicate data, to deliver data to wherever it goes, to have the right data in each geographic area that you need to be. That delivery of data gets underlooked. And I think that's going to be a bigger deal, especially since generative AI makes it so easy to create data intensive outputs, including audio, video, pictures, things that are going to increase the amount of transport that are necessary, as well as the amount of documentation and governance that are necessary in enterprises. Every time you create something that is OpenAI-ish in a business setting, you probably have to store that, right? Because you have records and all sorts of governance issues. So I think this networking issue is going to come up to a greater extent, and then the need to be able to keep track of what happens from a networking perspective and keep track of that performance is going to be important as well. So I think we're seeing a bit of calm before the storm, where companies that are investing right now in high performance networking are going to actually see an advantage because that capacity is going to get used up quickly, sometime in the next couple of years, as AI for companies where AI takes off.
Well, and I think what we talked in the last few weeks a lot about this idea of operationalizing AI, and that's where this is going to start to really matter. It's one thing if I'm using Copilot. If the Copilot drags on for a few minutes, it's really hard to say. Is it the model? Is it the network? What is it? But when we start operationalizing this and putting this into our production workflows that are particularly those that are engaging a customer in some way, and we're leveraging AI of any form, whether it's Gen AI, predictive AI, and feeding it into it, that transport, hey, we are going to flood it. It is absolutely going to get overrun because of the intense levels of inference that has to happen and what have you. And it just creates a higher volume, right? And so I think this is going to become really critical. In fact, I want to give props to them. As someone who helps tech companies with messaging, I appreciate when someone is nailing their messaging,
Mhm.
and they're absolutely nailing it. I mean, so not only this experience first approach where they're taking the network that sounds mundane and putting it in the context of the business context of the experience you're delivering to customers, employees, but then they specifically talk about this within the context of their AI native, that they're saying it's AI for networking, i.e., how can we use AI to build a more robust and stable network? But then networking for AI, which is how do you have a robust network infrastructure to support these AI workloads? And so, I mean, they just have this super tight story about how this all hangs together and fits. And I just always love to see that. And it's like a few other rarefied companies that their customers in the room were clearly on board with it and we're parroting it back and saying it. And when you see companies hitting that spot, that puts them in a really good space. And so my only concern, of course, for them is the acquisition of HPE, which of course is a very old school sort of company. If that deflates some of that over the long haul, but overall, it was really good to see him, and it was really interesting.
Excellent. Yeah, I honestly haven't talked to Juniper in a long time. More because of how network has been perceived in the CIO office than anything else. Nothing against networking. I love networking. I do a lot of work on the telecom and network expense side. But when it comes to the technology side, it gets underlooked, and it's not fair, but it is kind of true.